Hi everyone. At my house, we keep a collection of canvases, blank canvases, and brushes and acrylic paint so that we can have spontaneous painting days around the house. So one day I was painting with my kids and Layla asked me, "How's your painting coming along? How does it look?" I told her, "I don't know yet. I haven't looked at it." And she was puzzled because I was literally sitting there working on my painting, adding new brush strokes. But what was happening was I was zoomed in to the details of the painting. I hadn't zoomed out to look at the whole thing and how it was all coming together and what it really looked like. I didn't see the full picture yet. And that's how most of us are with our lives. We're so busy adding brush strokes in the details of our lives and checking things off a list that often we don't take the time to zoom out and look at our full story and how it's coming together and how the past, present, and future are going to play together. So it's critical and non-negotiable that we take time to stop, think, and reflect on our lives. Take time to take inventory. Here's why. We often don't give ourselves enough credit for all that's going on in our lives, for all that we're doing. We're often moving too fast or too dialed in to see what's happening. And it's important to do this because we don't want to miss what God is doing in our lives and how He's weaving the different pieces together for our full story. We need time and repetition to even look at our story with the right eyes and see it the way that it needs to be seen. Also, if we don't reflect properly, our minds are automatically going to go to the negative. We're going to see what we're doing wrong or what we're not doing good enough. And that's where our thoughts are going to dwell there. If we don't intentionally track our lives, we're going to miss all the diamonds and golden nuggets that we're surrounded by. So that's why it's important to stop and reflect. It can change so much about our future. So we're going to do an exercise together. This could take as little or as long as you'd like. Properly, it needs a good 45 minutes. But I think even just getting started and taking 5 minutes to kick things off is huge. It's such a good, quick win. So the first thing that I want you to do is make a list. Making a list is easy. We're just going to make a list of everything that happened in the time period that you want to track. It could be a day. It could be, what did you do today? What did you do yesterday? Or it could be a month, a quarter. It may be that you haven't reflected on the past year, and that's a great place to start, starting with the full year. But it's up to you what time period that you choose. You're simply going to make a list. You can take a pen and paper and write it down. That's always nice because it's tactile and you can see it. You can also get on your computer and type using an app like Evernote or Google Docs. I've used both of those. I'm a huge fan of Evernote. That way you can always go back and track from year to year or time period to time period all of your lists of things that have happened. On this list, if you're ambitious, you are going to aspire to write 100 things down. Now, if you're only tracking a day, I'm not going to expect you to do 100 things, but aim for 100 otherwise. And this is what you're going to write. It's simply going to be, what happened? How did I spend my time? Where was I? What did I do? How did I spend my money? Who was I with? Some of this is going to be accomplishments with numbers. I produced X dollars in revenue for my business or company, wherever I was. I got a promotion that was worth XYZ. I produced X number of widgets in a given period of time. Some of it is going to be quantitative like that. Some of it will be more qualitative. Who did you spend time with? I visited my parents. I visited my grandparents. I spent time with my spouse. I spent time with my children, my best friends. I ate vegetables once a day or 3 times a day, whatever it may be. Some of what you're going to do is not going to be measurable, and that's okay. It still matters. You could write that you went to the doctor, if that's something that you never do, or if it's something that you always do. It's something that happened this year and was a part of your life. You might write down a feeling or a revelation. How did you feel during this time period, either overall or at specific points? How would you describe your feelings? What is a revelation that you learned? Something that came to you that you hadn't processed or thought about before, a new perspective. As you put all these pieces together, you'll start to see the painting of your life come together. But first, we got to get all the little brush strokes in. Now, if you're trying to do this off of the top of your head, I'd be surprised if you get more than a handful of items on your list. We shouldn't be expected to remember everything about our lives. So we need tools to help us remember what happened during the past time period. Here's what you do. You'll want to look through your calendar or your planner. You can look through the photo roll on your phone, photos on your computer. You can look through your social media feed. That will help jog your memory. You might even look through your bank account and see where did I spend my money? What helps me also is to look through past emails. As I'm scrolling through emails, I start to remember, oh, this happened and that happened. You're gonna need tools like this to reflect your life back to you. Don't rely on your memory. Here are some more questions to help you create your list of 100 things for this time period. What did you overcome? What did you let go of? What have you brought into your life this year? What new things did you do? What old things did you continue building on? What have you mastered? What have you contributed to your community? What excited you? What did you gain? What kind of things did someone do for you that you received? What boundaries did you set? You can even include things that might feel like something you do often and don't really think about. Once you have your list, take a look at it and just stop and think, what do you think about the person who did all these things this year? If your best friend made this list and showed it to you, what would you say about them? And the reason I'm asking this question, this is a question I got from Amy Latta that she does in her exercises. But the reason that this question is important is because we're often hard on ourselves and realistic with other people. So if you take a third person perspective and pretend that's someone else's list and they're bringing it to you, think about how you would feel or talk about that person. You might give them a little bit more credit for all the things that they've done. The second thing that we're going to do as part of our zooming out process here is come up with categories that are important to you. And as you think of these categories, you may think of more list items to add to your list of 100, but I'm going to give you examples of the categories. You can pick as few as 3 categories and as many as 8. So the categories can be spiritual. You might be thinking about spiritual disciplines and practices in your life. Financial. If you're married or you have kids, marriage and parenting might be a couple of your categories. Career, nutrition, fitness, mental health, learning, stretching yourself, investing in yourself, giving and generosity, conscientiousness, self-awareness. These are examples of some categories that your list items will fall into, or categories that may be very important to you. Now, some people, we did the list and then we picked the categories. Some people may do the opposite, where they have the categories and they develop the list items underneath. Either way you do it is fine, but I think when starting out, it's easier to just have a big list and then go back and categorize. So if you did this on the computer, you can just copy and paste from your list of 100 and move it under different categories if you make little buckets or blocks on whatever document you're using. If it's pen and paper, you can't move things around, but you can take your categories and you have a structure where you can just rewrite your list items underneath the categories. So anyway, we did a brain dump. This was a brain dump of a list. And then now we can begin to organize it into something where you can continue tracking what you're doing. So now you have a framework to work with for the next time you sit and you reflect. The third thing that you want to do is figure out, how often do I want to be reflecting? For me, it would be the end of the year and I would start thinking about, what do I want to do next year? Well, what did I do this year? I felt like I didn't do anything. And I would quickly reflect and then wait till the next year and reflect again, which actually gets difficult because there's so much to remember. But over time, I kept building that muscle to where I tried to do it quarterly and I would fail, but it eventually became easier. And then it got to the point where I could do it monthly. Now, I'm not always perfect on this, but just over the years, as I kept trying, I got better at reflecting. I had a specific place I could go. I use Evernote, but you might use your Notes app on your phone. You might use your journal, a pen and paper, but you have to have a place to go and a time to regularly visit it and a process to dump the information, a process and tools. And your tools could just be looking at your photo roll, looking through your emails, looking at your planner to just simply copy down what you did. And then put in your calendar or have some type of trigger that reminds you to reflect. Sometimes I'll put on my calendar a reminder, hey, at 10 o'clock when I'm in bed, let me just write down real quick what I did, what was great about today. Something as simple as that. It doesn't have to be a huge 45-minute or 1-hour process. If you're putting in a little bit every day about what you did that mattered to you or that was interesting, then by the time you sit down at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, you have somewhere to look and it's less overwhelming. So the keys are have some tools to use to make it easy. Make sure it's not overwhelming and do this at regular intervals. And if you're not good at it at first, that's totally normal and awesome. All that matters is that you're willing to be bad at it so that over time, as the months and years go by, it gets easier and you get better and you're just building that muscle. And that way you can zoom out and see the full picture of your life. Keep writing your story, keep building your story. It doesn't have to be perfect, but even if you took 5 minutes to start making a list today of what's been going on in your life, whether accomplishments, actions, people, places, feelings, that's a huge step if you haven't already carved out time for reflection in your life. So try this out. Tell me how it goes. And I think you will be pleased at what you begin to see, at the opportunities that begin to arise, because you can see yourself more for who you really are than who you thought without even stopping to look. You may think you're like a random globs of paint when your life is really a beautiful painting.